Hi, I'm Angeline Murphy and today I am in Blackburn, home of community clothing, where the ladies and gents are stitching up the garments right here on the factory floor. It's all very exciting. I'm here to do a sneaky wee interview with Patrick Grant, and we're going to be talking all things the Great British Sewing Bee. We're also going to be talking about sustainability and our passion for working with your hands. So I'm thrilled to have a very special guest and a familiar face from me, Patrick Grant. Many of you recognise Patrick as a distinguished judge on the Great British Sewing Bee.
The distinguished judge? Does that mean the other judge is not so distinguished?
Oh, don't say that. Esme is not in the room. She can't defend herself.
I'm seeing her on Sunday, actually. We're doing a talk together in Cambridge.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah, she phoned me yesterday. What are we going to talk about? I'm like, we don't need to worry about this. You have got enough to say. I have got enough to say.
Esme's so organised.
Yeah.
It was Esme's first year, actually.
Was it?
Yeah. On my series, so
Yeah.
she's well embedded now.
She's so comfortable with it all now.
Yeah.
I mean, she forgets. I think I'm not sure she was aware she was doing telly then, but she's just, she says anything. She has no filter at all anymore.
No.
Yeah, which makes it quite, A, entertaining, but B, sometimes a bit like, yeah.
I remember the first time, if you remember back to my garment of the week. Do you remember the skirt, Patrick?
Yeah.
And Esme turned around and says, "Oh, it fits really lovely around the arse." And the production crew were like, "Bingo!
Yeah.
That is Esme."
Yeah.
Because people didn't know how to sort of.
Well, it's funny because this series now, she said something, and I think she said, I can't remember what she said, but it was something I was like, I'm a bit surprised that's made it through the BBC filter, but I guess times they are a-changing and all that. But yeah, she's unfiltered. And actually what comes, I think they do a really good job on the show of representing how it actually is now. I think in the earlier years, it was always really fun in the room.
Yeah.
May and I and Claudia and I had a hoot, and the contestants had a really fun time. But I think when you watched it, it sort of looked a bit serious.
Yeah.
But when Joe came into the show, especially, I think when Esme came in, it changed a bit, and then when Joe came in, it really changed a lot. And it started. It was just a better. It just felt more like it was in real life. I think the first couple of series, it was just a bit severe, because I see people that are watching early ones now, and I met somebody the other day that said, I'd never seen Sewing Bee until last year, and she said, and I'm now going back and watching all of them from the beginning. I'm like, how are you finding it? She was like, well, it was quite different back then, wasn't
Very
it?
good.
Like, yeah.
It's come on through the years, and it sort of has developed then.
How do you feel about the challenges now? Like, when you watch them, do you think you would have done all right?
Patrick, to be honest, when I went on the Sewing Bee, I always say I was blessed with a bit of being naive.
Yeah.
In terms of I didn't know what I didn't know. Every single challenge that I nearly did was new.
Yeah.
Absolutely new to me.
Yeah.
And I was thrown at the deep end.
Yeah.
Actually, on my practice run, Tracy, if you remember Tracy, she was in the bee with me that year. It was asked to do shearing, and I didn't even know how to say the word. Never mind.
Never mind how to do it. Yeah.
I'm going to just have to ask here.
Yeah.
Like we did, which happens in the show as well. We all
Yeah.
help each other.
Yeah.
I said, Tracy, how do you do this? And thank goodness she was a teacher.
Yeah.
And she explained it so well, got through that
Yeah.
stage, and that happened throughout the show. So
Yeah.
the challenges were always difficult, but they're definitely got, I feel, the bar has been raised.
I think they are more difficult, but only because I think I think because everybody is kind of canny now.
Yeah.
Everybody knows the sort of challenges that are coming, so I think a lot of them come on quite well prepared. They will have practiced lots of different things. So I think we've always felt like we've got to just keep. I think there was a point. I feel like last year's final was maybe as difficult as it could possibly ever get.
Yeah.
The transformation dress, I think, was hard, and I think Asma absolutely smashed it.
Yeah.
But I think that was probably the limit.
Yeah.
Because again, we're dealing with, guys like you who are brilliant amateurs, but are not doing this 40 hours a week every week. And also I think the leap of imagination that you have to have. I mean, that challenge was not just incredibly difficult because of the technical sewing, but you had to engineer the garment because you can't go out and buy patterns for, 2-into-1 transformation
Exactly.
gowns. So, yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see what they do, how they move it on this year.
Well, I think obviously I know how we moved it on for this
Obviously.
year because it's already done, and we've already actually done. We've done the challenges for Series 11 as well now. So.
Wow. Okay.
And we're well ahead. Well, we've come up. We've got the ideas for all the challenges for 11,
Very
but we
good. So
haven't.
do you work on them as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Okay,
Esme and
brilliant.
I and the sewing production team
Yeah.
and the producers, we get together and we throw ideas around for that. And once we've got the structure of, I mean, we've got 30 challenges.
Mm-hmm.
Then the sewing production team, Fiona and her guys will go and develop the pattern, and then work out some instructions, and then they'll have a go at, somebody who hasn't worked on the pattern will have a go at sewing it under a timed thing. But have you been asked to do testing on some of the?
Not yet.
Haven't
No.
you? So we now have a few former contestants who test for us.
Good. Interesting.
Just to check that timings are right and all the rest of it.
Because that's a challenge. The timing is, and I always wonder how they came to that exact time, because you were always pushed to the limit on most of the times. I remember making a bra and it was an absolute disaster, and I suppose you learn things as the weeks go on, what you should push on with, or what you go back and unpick. But I definitely find that if you take the unpicker out, it's game over. You're not going to finish. The time is so tight.
Well, I think the way we time it, obviously, the pros, somebody who's a pro does it, and then quite often what happens is the challenge is too long, so we will then simplify the challenge a bit. We'll be like, well, we're gonna, if it's a jacket, like, we'll have to take the lining out, or we have to, if it's trousers, like, we'll only have the side pockets, we'll not do the back, or whatever it is. Because we don't want the challenges to be too long, because it's already, as you know, utterly exhausting to do all of these. But then when we give it to the former contestants, they time it. But of course, they haven't got people chatting to them and poking a camera in their face and going, "What are you doing now?"
Yes.
And they haven't got me and Esme going, "Tell us what you're going to do," and blah, blah, blah. So, but we do allow a bit of time for that. But some people are chattier than others.
Yeah.
And also, some people just take quite a long time choosing fabric.
Yes.
And we don't allow a lot of time for that.
Yeah.
So if you take ages choosing, I mean, I remember one challenge when somebody was still wandering around the haberdashery 10 minutes after the challenge had started. We're like, there's no time for this.
There's no time.
Just grab something and crack on, because, but yeah, I think the first challenge of the first week of this series, nobody finished.
Yes.
And we knew it was totally possible.
Yes.
But maybe they just were doing more chatting.
You see, I did see on Twitter quite a bit of upheaval around, the challenges are just too hard. People aren't finishing them. What are they going to do with all these garments that they've made afterwards? All of this part of the process, it's too hard. And you get the sort of uproar, but then you get the supporters as well. But I suppose that creates a bit of buzz around it.
We set a challenge there that we know was doable. I don't know. Maybe I mean, you've got. I'm sure you learned as well that you've got to crack on.
You've got to crack on. You've no time. You've no time to chat. You just get the head down.
And I think
go through the steps.
Yeah, and I think especially on that first one, you're all in the room for the first time together. All the team are all in there. There's, sewing team, the camera team, everyone's there. And there is a temptation to have a little chat. And I think especially if it's the first one, you probably don't realise how much you've got to just crack on.
Yeah, and how much that clock ticks on fast.
Yeah, it does.
And the pressure's on. I remember at one point, actually, Patrick, you come round and you said to the cameramen, we have now been 15 minutes with Angeline, we need to move on. But they have an agenda. They need to get And then we need to get the garments finished as well.
Yeah.
So there is a lot of pressure, because I have done a lot of talks even since the Sew Bee, and people ask me, how do people not finish? Or I could do that at home, no problem.
Yeah.
It's trying to explain to them that you're under entirely different circumstances.
Well, no, it is. It's completely different. I mean, there is somebody poking their nose in your face, because I think what people don't realize, because of the way it's all edited, is that, you get me and Esme talking to you,
Yeah.
and then you get whoever is the presenter talking to you, and then you get the production team talking to you, and then you get us again. And it's almost like there's never much of a time when there isn't somebody going, so what are you doing now?
Exactly.
What have you done there? And then it's like, so-and-so's just bodged up the such and such. Get Esme and Patrick back out here.
I'm going to tell you an insider from the contestants. I remember after first week, I had pricked my finger and there was blood in my skirt. It was a white skirt. It was in a zip. And I was, oh no, I'm bleeding. And the next thing, 3 cameras, the drone camera, and you and Esme were down. And I think it was by week 3 I realised to stay mute. If we told each other, like if something was wrong, do not panic, because then,
it is. It's like the sharks.
Yeah.
Literally a prick of blood. We're off. Yeah.
Exactly. All good times. And it's funny because you had mentioned about, the challenges have just moved on as the years have went on. But when I remember when I was watching the Zombie for the first time, I remember because Fergal was in hospital in Derry, and I came up and I had a notepad and pen, and I was learning. I was very, very new to sewing, but I was learning all the terms, like cutting the bias. Where I would go and then get the book, because there wasn't really any YouTube videos. There wasn't really any guidance, and that's only 10 years ago. But I suppose the question then on the back of that, Patrick, is how do you think the sewing bee has changed people's perception of sewing?
Well, I think it has. I think it's what we know certain things. We know that loads more people are sewing.
Yeah.
We know loads more people are sewing because we know how many sewing machines are being sold. And we think there is something like about 1.5 million sewing machines in active service in the UK, which is way more than there were when we started. But we started. The two things went hand in hand. We didn't just start and it all happened after that. We started because we were aware that there was a sort of renaissance in sewing at home, and things were changing a little bit. But I think the reason that people used to sew at home because for many people it was the only way that they could afford to have new clothes, or it was the only way that they could afford to have the fashionable clothes that they wanted, in the days before fast fashion. And also for some people it was the way to make sure that they had clothes that fitted them well and they felt comfortable in. All of that I think has changed, because now you can buy new clothes for nothing. Like you can buy a top for less than the price of a cup of coffee. Yeah. So people aren't sewing because they have to for economic reasons. And in fact, if you went out and bought fabric and made something, it would probably cost you more than if you bought the whole garment from somewhere inexpensive. But people are sewing because they like it. Yeah. And I think I've just been doing a talk at a school in Bolton with the Heritage Craft Association. Like, people are coming back to making things because it makes them feel good. Working with your hands and your mind puts you into a different mental state. It allows you to relax, it allows you to focus in a way, it allows you to disconnect from the phones and the world of the kind of digital world. You can bury yourself in a world that's very real, very connected, very physical, and it feels very meditative. But also, it's about creating things that have value. I mean, the big problem that we've got in the world of clothing right now is that we're making and consuming incredible quantities of really terrible quality stuff that we have no real connection to and has no value. A lot of the clothes that are bought now, we wear them once. No one on the planet wants them. Nobody wants secondhand fast fashion. It's just rubbish. And I think people are now waking up to that as well. And making your own clothes or making clothes for other people creates clothes that have meaning and have value and tell stories and you feel connected to in ways that make you want to look after them and cherish them. And I think that's a really important change. I also think the show has brought people's has sort of reminded people that this stuff should have a long life.
Yeah.
You know, that second challenge is obviously there to remind people that the stuff we have around us, we should make it last as long as possible.
Exactly.
Not just because, you know, it's not for economic reasons. It's more because it's the right thing to do for the planet. You know, we making stuff, wearing it a couple of times and throwing it in the bin. It's just lunatic.
Yes. And it's so refreshing to hear you talk like that, Patrick, because you do be surrounded by social media and people beyond just scrolling, and you see the hauls, and it absolutely turns me,
Yeah.
to be honest, because I suppose you know the work that goes into it. I was brought up on a farm, like in the countryside, and you had to make do and mend. And that was sort of instilled in me in terms of my daddy always worked with his hands. He could turn his hand to anything. And that was sort of what I was brought up round. And that's what we're trying to actually instill in our children, is that, you know, that even their terminology, oh, Mummy, can you make this? Or Daddy will fix that. Do you know, rather that sense of, you can do it, rather than, oh, let's just, oh, you buy that, Mummy, buy that. Go on to Amazon and buy that. So that bringing that next generation in as well, and teaching them and showing them by showing that they see you doing it is very important.
Yeah. We have to value everything. You know, everything we have should be stuff that we value. I mean, I'm sitting on a chair that's 60 years old. This desk is 60, 70 years old. I mean, my little planter there is probably 120, 130 years old, surrounded by old stuff. And it's good stuff, and it's stuff that means something to me.
Exactly.
I mean, this is probably the newest thing on this desk. This is a little paper pot that I bought in Japan. But it's, you know, it's lovely. It's a little handmade thing, and I love it. And I've had it for probably 50 years. You know, this is how stuff should be. You know, we should be surrounded.
Behind every.
Yeah, I remember I remember the little shop in Japan that I bought it from.
Yeah.
And I mean, even this little coaster thing, it was, you know, it's made in England.
Yeah.
Somebody's made this little, you know, it's just a little wren on a thing. You know, that's the solution. The solution the solution for the future is valuing everything and valuing everyone. And, you know, we are turning a corner, I feel. I feel we are turning a corner. I mean, there's a lot of people that don't even see the corner. Yeah. They're just ploughing on with the Sheins and the Temus and the bad stuff. Yeah. But a lot of people are like, this is just crap. Like, I'm surrounded by junk. Like, I'm just filling my life with junk that has no value, no meaning. It's just junk. And there are a lot of people, I think of all ages actually, who are very consciously saying, I've had enough of being sold this stuff. I'm just going to opt out. Yeah.
And I suppose I work full time. My job is marketing, so I understand the power of that as well. And you're being pushed and forced. But I also do a lot of work with live here in Northern Ireland, and they give tips like just unsubscribe, you know, just remove them push notifications, because they're all being pushed for you to come on back, see these clothes. So there's all that pressure. Yeah. So do you feel it's with the consumer, it's with the customer that needs to make that conscious decision?
The brands are not going to change. You know, I talk about it in the book actually. I had dinner with the chairman of H&M. I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 years ago now, certainly pre-COVID. And we were talking about sustainability at H&M, and he was saying, yeah, we're doing lots of good things. Mm-hmm. I said, well, you are. You know, undoubtedly there's some good stuff going on in there, but it's such a tiny wee percentage of what you're doing. Mm-hmm. Like, you know as well as I do that 99.9% of what you do is just the bad stuff. Yeah. And he said, well, what would you do? I said, well, if you really cared about the planet, you just shut it all down. His first response was, what about all my staff? Because they were the second biggest employer in Sweden. They may still be. And I said to him, well, you've got enough money that you could invest in new businesses for all of those people that would only be doing things that are good for the planet. Mm-hmm. You know, we've sort of moved down this path of this sort of consumptive path now, where we're just buying so much stuff, and it's not really, I don't see what good it's done any of us. I mean, it's made a few people really rich. Yes. You know, the guy who owns Zara is like the third richest guy on the planet. The guy who owns Amazon is like the second richest guy on the planet, or the richest guy on the planet. You know, the H&M family, the richest family in Sweden. I mean, like, some people have got really rich on this, but for most of us, what benefit has it been, this 50 years of this mad acceleration in consumption, what benefit has it been to any of us? Like, 5 million people have lost their jobs. We now have so much crap, we don't know what to do with it. And have we got any happier? Like, is buying all this junk making us feel really pleased with ourselves? I don't think so. So what, I mean, I don't feel like it's had any benefit at all. And actually, you know, the route to happiness, I think, is, you know, just buy things that you feel connected to, that you know will have a long life and continue to either give you a bunch of joy, or in 10 years' time, when I no longer want to wear this navy blue sweatshirt, I know that I can stick it on eBay and somebody will want it, because it will be just as good then as it is now. In fact, it will probably be better, because it will be a bit worn in, it will be aged a wee bit in a nice way. And somebody will go, well, that's made in England, it's 100% cotton, it's heavy jersey, I'll have that. And it will go round and round and round and round. And like, everything we make should be made with a view that it will have a long life, because then, you know, people will make money from reselling it. People will make money from repairing things. People could make money from saying, well, it's worn, the cuffs are gone, but I'm going to salvage that and I'm going to make something, you know, make a sleeveless one out of it, or do something else. But, you know, if we put things into the system that have a potential for a long, valuable life, then that's good. But, you know, just stuffing more of this garbage into the system is no good to anybody.
Yeah. Totally, and I think you've absolutely hit the nail on the head when you say that we want to create something that has value and that people value, because then it has that life of repair, and people will buy it again, and it'll just stay in the economy, stay in the cycle for so much longer. What's happening at the moment is people just throwing stuff out. Yeah,
well, I mean, 80% of the clothes we buy just get binned. I mean, only 20% of the clothes we dispose of actually go to charity shops, and even then, out of all that stuff that goes into those clothing recycling or, you know, charity shop collection bins, quite a lot of that stuff has no value. You know, quite a lot of it used to be getting sent away to sub-Saharan Africa, but now it's not, because they don't want it anymore. It's just a terrible system. Like, how stupid are we that we're just producing all this junk?
And the more you have, actually, the more stress it brings to you.
I think that's probably right, isn't it?
I think that's it. So
I mean, also, I think the more you have, the more you have, the less you are likely to value any individual thing. Like, if I had 1,000 pen pots, they'd all be meaningless, but I've got one, and I know, and that's all I need. And I think the same is true with clothes. I mean, there's a lot of statistics around the amount of clothing we have and the amount of our clothes we wear. You know, statistically, we now have 5 times as many pieces of clothing as we did when I was a kid. And I never felt like I didn't have enough clothes.
Yes.
And we only wear a third of it. 2/3 of the clothes we own just sit in our wardrobes gathering moths and, you know, taking up room that most of us don't have, because housing's so expensive now.
Exactly, and people are spending so much money on storage, and they want more storage solutions, and it's people actually just remove what you have and don't buy new.
Yeah, well, we've all had to turn our storage cupboards into bedrooms, and like you know, but there's still, as you say, there's still this pressure, and the marketing, like the sophistication of marketing has gotten so crazy. People don't even know how often they're being sold stuff. You're being sold stuff all the time. I mean, I was on the 6 o'clock show last night, and we were talking about this. We were talking about the book, and I made the comment that we were being, you know, every time we watch TV, somebody's selling something to us. And this morning, I saw the presenter had posted on her Instagram a little thing about me being on the show. And the next story was her posting about the dress that she'd worn, and it was from a particular store and a particular thing. And I'm like, that's part of it. Like every single time you're looking at your phone, somebody's subtly or obviously somebody's selling you something. And I think the really, really difficult thing now is that the latest incarnation of all this stuff is what's called gamification. And I do touch on it a little bit in the book. But since writing the book, I've started to get more and more emails from companies trying to sell me their services to gamify the shopping experience. And I'm like, have you ever seen Community Clothing? Like, you couldn't, you are so far from the mark here. But, you know, they're trying, but this idea that shopping is being turned into an addictive game-like experience. And Temu and Shein and others are absolutely at it. You know, they're trying to get kids addicted to shopping. And in a way, like in the past, if you wanted that kind of game experience, like when I was a kid, you went to an arcade and you pumped some money into a machine and you stood there for a while and you did your Space Invaders or you did your driving game or whatever it was, and then you walked away. Now you get that experience on your phone while you're shopping, but you don't just walk away. You end up with £2.48 worth of some plastic shit from somewhere that then comes like that then gets delivered from the other side of the world. So like you've got this like I'd rather just pay the money and not have the stuff.
Yes.
But that's how they're getting you hooked into it now. Is like turning the whole thing. And as I say, I'm getting at least an email a week now from companies selling me like gamification services.
Interesting.
And that's really new. That's really the last probably 2 months actually that's been happening. But this idea that they're very deliberately trying to manipulate us into this addictive sort of state of mind with regards to shopping is really, it's sinister.
It is sinister because they're all trying to find their own wee niche and their own wee USP and how they can get you addicted, because shopping's just shopping, right? How do we differentiate ourselves from somebody else?
How do we keep them coming back? How do we stop them from going to somebody else's website? You know, if you're on your phone for 3 hours a day, they want you on their site for, you know, they don't want you looking at anybody else's shopping site. So it's really, you know, it's bad. I mean, I think the problem is the way these businesses are set up is that the only way that they can succeed is to get bigger and make more profit. And that is a problem. In a world with finite resources and a growing population, businesses need to be going the other way. You need businesses whose model is to sell you as little as possible, really, in physical terms. And that's just not where we are. You know, we're there. We set our business up in exactly that way because our view is there are 66 million people in the UK. They all need a decent pair of pants and a decent pair of socks. Like, that's more than enough. And that, you know, if we were successful in our business, we could employ lots and lots of people in the UK making stuff. But we don't have to grow. Like, we don't need year-on-year increases in profits, year-on-year increases in sales. You build a business. It's perfectly possible to build businesses that exist in a sort of stasis. And I talk a bit about it actually because the Savile Row businesses are kind of like that. I mean, most of the businesses on Savile Row are at a size that they can just exist perfectly happily. They don't have, and mostly because they're owned by people who've been owning these businesses for a long, long time and feel committed to keeping them in good shape. But you could, you know, I mean, I'm not a degrowther, but I would question that the need for the growth in the volume of consumption. You know, we need to reduce the volume of consumption, keep the value the same. But that, you know, by keeping the value the same and reducing the volume means you can use better materials, you can pay people better, and you can create objects that are then worth repairing. I mean, there's a lot of talk about repair at the moment. And the problem is, if you've bought something for a tenner and it needs a repair, you have to do the repair locally. You know, people are being paid good money. You have to be paid properly for doing that. It's almost like it's going to cost you more to repair it than to buy a new one. And that's got to be mad.
Yeah, it is. And funny, I have hands-on experience with that because I would have people coming to me, mostly be people that I know are friends looking for alterations. And they say, oh, I got this for £10 or whatever. And I would say, well, it's going to be at least 20. you know, to fix that or take that in and turn that up. But some of them, you know, when you explain, well, this will take me, I've been sitting chatting to you for an hour and this is going to take me another couple of hours. That sort of realization of skill and people's time.
Yeah.
I do sort of find, you know, the difference between if you get a plumber in to do something or a bricklayer or any other tradesman, that the skill of sewing and tailoring is on a different level.
Well, yeah, it's like you don't complain. You go to the garage to get your car sorted.
Yeah.
You don't like, you look at the labour and you go, yeah, that's fine. You know, parts and labour.
Parts and labour.
It's like the labour has a value.
Exactly.
And I think we have to, again, I think it's just a problem. It's a problem that because clothes are made so cheaply, people are like, well, I can buy a new one for this. But it's like, well, but that new one is absolute garbage. Like, it's just rubbish. It's the worst quality of the worst type of material. Like this, you know, it's hard to imagine how much worse clothing could get. I mean, it will get worse, undoubtedly, because that is the only way those businesses can continue to grow.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's just the materials you've gone from high quality materials like wool, cotton and linen to low quality materials. Well, low quality in terms of how they feel to wear. Low quality materials like polyester, nylon, acrylic, polyurethane and others. And that was the first stage. But then you've gone from sort of good quality polyester now to the worst quality of polyester. And you've gone from like 200 gram polyester to 100 gram polyester to 80 to 70 to 65. It's getting thinner. It's getting crappier. It's being put together worse. It's like, how much worse can it get? But I think history tells us it can definitely get worse. And if you think we've got to the bottom, I think you probably find that we haven't.
Yeah, I know. I don't buy that much. I think I said that before, but when people come with alterations from some dresses like Shein and I see how badly they are made, it's interesting to see that they're actually pushed through. But I suppose because you make your own clothes, you have this level of where the standard should be. And then when you see where it is, you think, how did people not notice that? Because you're so critical of your own.
Well, nobody's there to notice. Because the thing is that nobody's selling that clothing has any interest in it being of any quality level at all. Yeah. It does it hang together long enough that we can put it on somebody's back?
Yes.
If the answer is yes, then that's acceptable.
Wow.
That's it. Yeah. They don't care. They don't talk about the, you know, nobody talks about quality in this world. You know, it used to be that, you know, the fundamentals of marketing, the 4 Ps, really basic marketing stuff, promotion, price, place, and product. Yeah. Like the product one is the only one we care about, but it's the one that almost nobody else seems to give a stuff about.
One of my big, I suppose, dreams in life is just to pass on the skill of sewing to as many people as possible.
Yeah.
And one of the big things is men sewing. And I find, do you think there is more men sewing now? Do you think the sewing bee has brought that back? Do you think it's of interest to them?
I think it is of interest. I think it's funny. I think in the last few years, I feel like more men are watching the show. Maybe just because they can't avoid it. But I think there are quite a lot of men who watch it and are enjoying it. I get a lot of guys coming up to me and saying, yeah, I really like your show. It's really good. It's like engineering with cloth, and they do amazing stuff, which is great. Yeah. I mean, in the professional world, I mean, you've been around the factory here. There are as many guys on sewing machines as there are women. Yeah. And, you know, that's it's the same in Savile Row. You know, we've got a very even gender split now. Actually, when I first started on Savile Row, there were more male tailors than female by a long stretch. Yeah. But I think in the last 15 years, the number of young women apprenticing as tailors has increased massively. And actually, there are more female apprentices coming through than male, and have been, I think, probably for the last 10, 15 years. So the gender balance is changing a lot in the workshops in Savile Row. But there are still a lot of guys who tailor. I mean, it was traditionally a male role, and dressmaking was a female role. Partly because of the tools, you know, the big heavy irons that you had to use for tailoring. I mean, they are hard to lift. I don't know if you've ever picked up an old tailor's iron, but
No.
my God, they're
So
I mean,
what's
they're
it
like 20 kilos. They are.
Wow.
It's not just you haven't just got to lift it. You've got to work
move
with it.
it,
You've got to move it precisely.
Patrick, I want to actually speak to you about the big community soap that we worked
Yeah.
on together.
Yeah.
The random phone call I got from you, I remember driving up through the Mourne Mountains. You had messaged me on Instagram. I was like, Fergal, pull over straight away. Patrick Grant wants to talk to me about something. It was a bit random. You were the judge in the Soamby, obviously. I looked massively up to you. And you had been watching from afar of the work that had been done.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was incredible.
Yeah.
The community that came together. And it probably actually doubled down on my passion for sewing because I realised how much it was needed for people's well-being. And you touched on that actually earlier, how important it was for people.
Yeah, I think the big community show was an amazing thing. I mean, funny, there's a letter. Funny you mention it, but there is a letter. There's a letter on my pinboard there. A letter of gratitude from the government.
Wow. For the big community.
For the big community show.
We were recognised in Northern Ireland as well for the great work, and we actually got funding from the Northern Ireland government as well. We did.
Brilliant. I mean, it was such a good thing. I mean, obviously, there were two huge beneficiaries, and the first beneficiary, I think, was very obvious. You know, the people who got face coverings and other things that everyone was sewing, scrubs and gowns and other things. But, you know, primarily the big community sew was about making face coverings. Lots and lots of people got face coverings who wouldn't have had face coverings otherwise. So we definitely saved people's lives.
Yes.
Probably quite a lot of people's lives. That's obvious. But the less obvious one was how valuable it was to those people who were doing the sewing.
Yeah.
I think that sense at a time when everybody was denied any sort of socializing, I think there were a lot of people who were feeling isolated and depressed, and I think and purposeless. And I think what it did was that it gave a sense of being part of something really important to a lot of people. I think the actual making itself was also probably therapeutic, but just having that network, you know, being part of, like, everybody pulling together and doing something really, really important for, you know, for the good of all of society was such a nice thing to be part of. And I was so pleased because I went to the government really early on and said, look, we could help with scrubs and gowns. There's loads of people at home who've got sewing machines. Like, there's tons of factories that have got cutting capability. We could get fabric in, we could cut it all out, you know, in massive bulk, and we could send it out to all these individual sewers and we could get stuff made. And they said no. They were like, well, you'll have to get health and safety to accredit every person. I'm like, it's a pair of scrubs. It's essentially a set of pajamas. Like, we don't need to have, like, BSI get all over this. But they said no.
Yeah.
And I was really disappointed because it was like a huge opportunity to do something really good, and they said no. But anyway, about a month later, or maybe even three weeks later, they came back and they said, actually, you know, we think that idea will work for masks. And obviously I knew that people were already doing this stuff. And it was, you know, all we did was sort of encourage others to join in and also legitimize it a bit, because, you know, we got Public Health England to say these masks are good. You know, if you use these materials and you sew in this way, you will make a face covering that is actually going to be effective. So that was good. So all of a sudden people knew that these homemade masks were actually worth making. And people doubled down and just made absolutely bundles of these things.
Hundreds upon hundreds.
Thousands in some cases. And, you know, I don't have a total, but I think I would be surprised if I would say just adding up the numbers of people in all the various different groups that we were associated and we knew about, there were probably at least 100,000 people making masks. Some made one or two, some made hundreds. And I think between all of that, there must have been at least 1.5 million masks made.
Wow.
I think.
It is incredible.
But, you know, that's like 15 each for 100,000 people. it's not a big total when some people were literally making hundreds.
They were. It was like being at the cold face of it. There was people taking it as their job. They collected the fabric, they went home, they stitched, and they left it back of pride. And it was that purpose of, I have something to do here. And you talk about, you know, the well-being being the secondary. See, when you're actually getting the messages from people who are saying, you've literally saved me because you're giving me something to do. And then they come and pick the fabric and you sort of give them a wee and away they go off and feel chuffed.
Yeah.
So I definitely think in a time of, it was awful, but it brought out so much good in people and also brought out that skill.
Yeah. No, it really was. It was a wonderful thing to be part of.
It really was. It really was. Next project, Patrick.
Well, I know that quite a lot of people have carried it on, as you have. And, you know, I think people have realised that bits of the NHS, God, they need a leg up. And, you know, if we have time and we have skill, we can all be very useful to society in ways that we maybe didn't realise before. I think there is a lot more charitable sewing going on now than there was pre-pandemic, and that's a good thing.
Yeah. One final question, Patrick, because I really appreciate your time. I know you're a busy man. What does success look for Patrick Grant? What does it look like?
Well, I've been thinking about this quite a lot, actually, because you know, writing the Savile Row book is a sort of look back over 20 years that I've spent working on Savile Row, and less is a look forward at where I think we as a society can go, but also where I think community clothing as a business can go. You know, I started community clothing 8 years ago with the intention of, firstly, making good clothes and selling them at affordable prices, but also by doing that to create and sustain a load of work, good skilled jobs in and around the UK. And so far we've been really successful, but we've got so much further that we can go with it. We've barely scratched the surface on what we're doing. I mean, we periodically tot up the number of hours of work we've created. So we've always done it. We've always, from the very beginning, I wanted to track the number of hours of work we created, because it's you know, all businesses have to have a sort of unifying goal, and our goal is to create good work locally. And the only way we can work out whether we've been successful or not in that case is to actually measure it. So it doesn't matter how much we sell or what profit we have. There isn't any. But the thing that's important is the work we create. So, and I remember, I think if you look back through our Instagram, you will see, right way back, you will see us being really excited about hitting 1,000 hours of work and being really excited about hitting 10,000 hours of work. And we've just done the total and we're now at 380,000 hours of work.
Wow.
You know, we are, you know, within, I would say probably within another year, you know, we might be at 500,000 hours of work.
That is
and it is brilliant, but it's only just the start. Like, I think currently amongst all of the factories that we work with, there are almost just under 2,000 staff. So between the various different people, so the textile manufacturers, yarn spinners, weavers, garment knitters, jersey knitters, dye houses, finishing houses, cutting and sewing operation, you know, all of those different people that we work with, and we now work with 45 factories around the UK. Between all of them, they employ about 2,000 people, just under. It's about 1940, I think, at the last count, but things change too quickly to keep an accurate count. But we're roughly just under 2,000 people. I think if we're successful in what we want to do, we can directly create about 5,000 jobs. And I think that indirectly we can create maybe 50,000 jobs. And I think if we're successful in what we do, we can demonstrate actually that that you can run businesses in a way that's very different, and you can run them with a different goal in mind. You know, our goal is good work for people and affordable, good quality stuff. And if we prove that you can do it, then hopefully other people will think, well, yeah, why don't I do that for, you know, cups and saucers, and why don't I do that for chairs, and why don't I do that for everything else that we do, bicycles and cameras and, you know, all the other things that we used to make. I think it will probably take, I don't know how long it's going to take, but I think, you know, I'm 52 now. If I retire when I'm 75, that's another 23 years. I think it will probably take me most of that time to get it to a point, if it succeeds at all. You know, it's still early days, but it's going all right.
Good.
But
yeah.
we've hardly anybody knows about us. I've been doing tours for the book, and, you know, some of the audiences have been quite big. You know, I've done talks to, you know, 1,500 people plus.
Wow.
And I'm like, right, who's heard of community clothing? Sort of 3 hands go up. You know, we've only just started. You know, and it's not a difficult sell. You know, we make really good clothes and they're affordable. Like that's all. That's it.
That's your message.
Doesn't need to be any more complicated than that. Like, these socks are great. And they're really affordable. They're a third the price of any comparable quality sock. That's enough. The fact that it's also doing good for, you know, the local economy is just a bonus. But nobody else sells good stuff at a good price anymore. Like, you can buy good stuff, but you're going to have to take out a second mortgage. You know, the people, you know, you can buy the same socks that we sell. We sell them for £6, and you can buy them for 24 or 28 quid from other brands. It's like, that's okay if people have got that money, but most people haven't. But if you've only got £6 to spend on a pair of socks, the socks you're buying are pretty bad. And if you've only got £2 to spend on a pair of socks, they are really terrible. So yeah, that's it. Like, I think, you know, it's just reaching people, and because of the way the business works, we don't have a lot of money for marketing. We spend almost nothing on marketing, by comparison to most brands. I mean, we probably spend, I mean, at the moment, it's tiddly. It's probably less than 5% of turnover, which in our industry is mini.
And in today's world, marketing budgets have been getting bigger. Well done, Patrick. Keep pioneering and keep making strides in what you're doing. And I do believe that by the time you retire, more manufacturing will be done here in the UK, and it's something that we should be very proud of. Thank you very much for having me here today. It's been an absolute honour.
My pleasure.
It's been an absolute delight to have this time with you and chat to you. You're not as intimidating as you were 8 years ago. So thank you very much.